All right, what's up, YouTube?
I've waited 3-4 years for that to be here.
Oh, yes, yes. All right, we have Ryan Thompson with us today. Does anybody know who Ryan Thompson is? Can't hear back. Ryan is like, are you the OG, like first moderator of all time, or right up there, just the first couple?
No, Nick and I. Nick Korn. He's left us since, but yep.
If you've been part of the Ask BRS, originally Ask BRStv on Facebook, Ryan Thompson is the OG now first moderator of there. He's joined us today. He is a big fan of halides, or at least was. He gave me a big question mark about it just a second ago, so we're going to have to talk about that. We are going to talk about a whole bunch of things in related to lighting, but one, I want to demystify something and take things that are not there. Oh, also, one more thing. What else do you do for BRS other than just the moderator?
I also, for the last couple of years, providing the swag. As you can see here, this one, prototype we're running with, the hat, basically any swag that we've done probably since 2019, 2020.
All right, so if you got any swag from us, Ryan Thompson is your man, the reason why. Yeah. Oh, and one more thing. How long have you been reefing?
I'm going on 18 years now.
18 years. Oh, man, you're like you and me are like the same time. Right?
Yeah.
2004?
Yep, I started my first tank, I think late 2005. Started researching it middle 2005, back when all we had was local fish stores and the very beginnings of the forums.
Okay, so you have been here from like the whole journey, Reef Central on up.
Oh yeah, Reef Central. I was big into Reef Central, very big.
Yeah, I mean, I keep meaning to go back and look at how many thousands of posts I still have there.
Last I saw it was down. I don't know if that's true now, but you couldn't even get on the site last I checked.
Well, Reef's better anyway.
Yep.
All right, so today what we're going to talk about is the Magic T5 Photon, right? I've been waiting my whole life for this. Like, I feel like I've been developing this conversation in my head for the last decade, and today I get to share it with the universe.
Yeah.
All right, so come along for the ride. So has anybody ever out there said like T5s and halides and stuff are better than LEDs, and I really just can't tell you why, they're just magic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Me too. I've been using the T5s in combination with LEDs for almost since inception, other than the T5s to begin with. And I couldn't really tell you why, but like all my tanks that were running T5s were just better than the ones that didn't. Up until the 750. All right?
Yes.
Up until the 750, you've seen it out here. The best tank here?
Yep, that one and the one right behind you, the 900. Yep. Absolutely phenomenal. The colors, as good as you can be on the camera, don't explain what's on in that tank. Those colors are. So
we did that color episode last week, right?
Yep.
And I wanted to try to touch them, so that they looked like they do in person. I was like, it's just better if we don't edit it at all.
Yep.
Right?
No, that worked.
Yeah, but yeah. So those are all just it's like 4 radions in a 6-foot tank. That was my first experience with LED only that actually beat out everything, and it really kind of spurs the question, like, all right, well, if I can have that type of success now, what is it about this that's working, and why was it my T5s felt like they were magic before? All right, and to that, if you asked any like biologist or you asked a scientist, what would they tell you if they said that these fluorescent tubes have magic in them?
They're gonna laugh. I looked all over. Yeah. I Googled this up and down.
If you hit up Sanjay, dude, I'm sure he'd laugh at you.
I think it's his quote, a photon's a photon.
Photon's a photon, man. Like, it's how you use the photon. Right tool, right job. In the same way, a magnet at one point in time was magic, right? They pull stuff around, we don't know why.
Yeah.
Right? At the same time, lightning was magic at one point in time. It was the gods were angry, right? Yeah. Until we understood static electricity, basically.
Yep.
In the same spirit here. So I want to give you open and honest. I got an agenda here today, right? And I want to change the conversation. I feel like I just so desperately want all of you, because I know the people that are following this lighting series are nerds like us, right? They're the thought leaders, everything. I so desperately want to change the conversation into the things that work. Let's all agree together that, hey, there are a handful of things in here, and it doesn't have to be LEDs, T5s, or any specific brand. When it looks and behaves like this, it works. It doesn't matter where the photon originated from.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I don't believe in genies, and I don't believe in the magic photons. So come along for the ride. I can't prove any of this, but I can tell you I believe it wholeheartedly, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think. This one I need comments. I need them. I need to hear from you guys. I believe what you believe, or you're a nut job.
Because I'm going to throw out there, I'm going to tell you I've been a big believer in the magic photon. Maybe we don't call it magic, but I have been absolutely that person. Halides and T5s are just better. They are better. And until you break down why and really take and dissect that, yeah, we'll just call it magic.
Well, that's the real, I may call it magic for fun.
Yeah.
But it really is. They're just better. And I can't tell you why. In the same way I couldn't tell you why the magnet worked until somebody else figured it out, right? But once you spell it out, you're like, oh, well, that's pretty easy, I guess. You know? All right. So in that spirit, while we're going along this journey, it's really easy to be kind of pissed off that you bought a bunch of LEDs and they just didn't work out the way that you had hoped. But you won't be the first one. That whole journey happened through fluorescent lighting too. There's T5 lighting, there was the tech light, there was PC lights. These were my first light, actually the Coral Life thing. I saw them at the fish store, bought those. Later found out they were not what I wanted. Bought the tech fixture, they worked out. Later wished that I had bought the ATI Sun Power. But eventually we ended up on a certain bulb mix and a spectrum that just worked. But it took over a decade to get there.
Oh yeah, I mean when we started with T5s originally, what do you get, 6500K and like blue. Remember Current USA, that's what they came with, 50-50 mix.
Boom.
That was it. It wasn't until, and I don't even remember if ATI was the first, that we started seeing the different spectrums coming out so we could play with colors at that point.
And then everybody copied ATI. All right. So, I got a bunch of tanks to show you today, and just a spoiler alert, most of them are going to come from Reef to Reef, the Reef Tank Winners of the Month, the last 10. So I'll share them with you in a second, but I want to go through a couple of tanks because you're going to see things here that are unmistakable. Like the tanks that are the best, the things that if you wanted to emulate somebody else's success, it's so obvious, we just need to embrace it. So I don't know, you call this tank a success?
Absolutely.
Okay, does lighting seem to be a problem for this tank?
Nope.
Yeah, it's a little bank of T5s on the top. Plugged it in the wall one day, walked away, lighting was done.
Threw a timer on it and you were done.
Yeah, you did it. You did have a $20 timer.
Yep.
It's true. That was complicated. And you know how I tuned it? I used the amount of bulbs that somebody else used once.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, that's as easy as it goes, right? This isn't my tank, but on my tank I did the same thing. All right, look at this one. This one is success. Would anybody say like, oh yeah, I guess that guy can grow coral? Yeah, I mean, it's just like blanket of halide light. And I used to think of halides, the bulb was actually the light source, but it's obviously these reflectors.
Yep.
All the light's bouncing off the reflectors down in is the light source, blanketing the entire thing.
Yeah, because you've got, I mean, look at that. You actually have a 24 by 24 light there. You don't have a bulb that's, I don't know, 6 inches, 8 inches, whatever they are, light in the tank.
Anybody who's like hasn't been around for 20 years, this is what tanks always used to look like in people's house. We had giant hoods, or you just had them hang out here because we all used these big, huge Luminarcs. Every club in the nation was doing group buys on them. We'd buy them 100 at a time. And this is what was over the top of our hoods.
And there's usually a couple fans on one side blowing across the water.
Oh yeah.
To try and
all these, and the reality is it's like, is it simple, man? You mount this, the 3 plugs, and you plug it right into your giant chiller too.
Yeah, and Jim down the street, he said run it 12 inches off the tank, run it 14 inches off the tank. That's what he did.
Boom, it was easy. That was successful, right? Okay, I don't know, this one's successful?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, big bank of T5s, real simple, man. I don't know, like lighting doesn't seem to be the problem here, does it?
Nope.
Okay, what about this one? Does this one have a lighting problem?
No.
There's a theme going here, which is like the lighting is end to end. It is blanketing these things, these organisms from every possible angle, because you could never light these things proper. They would all die, and they would grow in really weird forms, and they would grow towards the light and away from the light. And instead, these are, I think Giesman, I can't think of the infinities maybe, or spectra.
Depending on double end or single end. But
okay, they've turned sideways. End to end to end to end to end to end to end.
And I just realized right here, if you look, the angles, the one is sitting down on top of The other. They're angled sitting on top of. That's to squeeze one more in, use the angles to your advantage there.
Oh, you wasn't even satisfied with the fact that they were a little bit farther apart. Actually had to wedge them on top of each other.
They're wedged. And I bet you if these are something like the Spectra, there's 2 T5s at 4 total for every fixture. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. He's got 24 bulbs over that, just in T5s.
Just in T5s, and how many halides?
Yeah.
Okay, so by the way, after we get through these reef to reef things I'm going to show you in a second, I have about a half dozen things that I'm going to ask you. Are these the reasons why we are struggling or were struggling with LEDs? And then I'm also going to ask the most potent question that's going to rub people the wrong way, right?
Perfect.
Are LEDs now in that factor actually better than T5s? And like I can feel it right now, the little like hairs on everybody's neck saying, no way, there's no way it's possible.
The keyboard warrior started.
Okay, this might be true, might not be. Hold on, wait and see, have an open mind, because open mind is how we move forward. Okay, all right, so this is the Reef to Reef. So I had this idea, I saw it on a Reef to Reef, and I was like, you know what would be really fun is for me and Ryan just to go through the last 10 winners of Reef to Reef's Tank of the Month, right? And just in case, we talk all the time about picking a mentor and following them. These articles are awesome. They tell you exactly how they approached it and why they approached it. And if you have I don't know if it'd be perfect for like a brand new reefer, but anybody who knows what they're doing already could read one of these things and emulate this person's success and their mentality perfectly. I think this, I always been talking about like building a recipe book. Yep. Right? There should be like an allrecipes.com for reefing, like allreeftanks.com, and we could pick recipes of success. Yeah. It's Reef to Reef's Tank of the Month. Oh, absolutely. Anybody, if you've gotten in, you figured out how to keep your alkalinity, how to keep your calcium, you've got the basics down, you go start reading these right here, your mind is going to be opened to all the things you can improve on your setup and why they're getting the results they're getting. Okay, I'm gonna hopefully David from Reef to Reef's watching. I don't know, it'd be a miracle. But if he's watching, the one thing that I would ask is I had to go dig in the menu system to go find this thing. I had to go find an article, find the tank, and then find the tank of the month. It was hard for me to find all this stuff. It should be the very first thing on there. And it shouldn't be tank of the month. It should be tank recipe of the month, man. Emulate this person. They know what the hell they're doing. Yeah. Right? Okay. Yep. All right. So is this tank a winner? Absolutely. Look at that. What does it look like? How's he lighting? He's got Orfix. Oh, almost like those infinities or spectras from Giesman. They're almost touching. And they're within an inch of each other. It would have been even better if they were like wedged on top of each other. Yeah, he does have a little bit. He could fit one in. You know. He could get another extra inch in there. Yeah, he could. Yeah. Okay. This also matches, by the way, when you saw Sean's super huge tank. So if everybody went to the journey, we went up north, and he has this super mega multiple thousands of gallons of tank, and Orfix on the ceiling. I want to say 3 or 4 feet off the tank. 22 feet or something. He's got 22 fixtures. 22 of them on there. Or something like that. There's not any space. It is designed to work like the sky, blanketing the whole thing, right? Okay, so I don't know. It's pretty easy to understand why that would be successful, right? And it looks a lot like the other options that are out there, and there's nobody doubting that this thing produces that, because it did, right? All right, so what about this one? You know, this one's filled with LPS, polyps, ganies, all kinds of different colorful corals in there. And green star polyps and stuff. It looks beautiful and produced with what? LEDs. Yeah, it's produced with 2 GHL mitris. I call it mitris. Is it mitris? I think. Okay, you never know. It's like tunes, tons, all Giesman. All right, all right. It's a world where we all read it and we don't say it out loud. All right. However, notice one thing here. And this is the #1 frustration for me. Is all the manufacturers out there, doesn't matter, it's not, I'm not picking on GHL here because it's all of them, they all tell you that their lights are good for a 2-foot area because they don't want to scare you away with the price tag and all that kind of stuff, right? Do those look like they're 2 feet apart for me? Because that doesn't look like a 4-foot tank to me. Nope, I bet you that's a 3-foot, and he's got 2 fixtures over it. These things are just a couple inches apart from each other, and this is the theme, right? Okay. All right, what about this one? You know, I think I might be quoting wrong. I think this might be Lou from, I know it was Lou, but it might be Lou from Tropic Marin. I don't know.
His
I think
tank?
Lou
I don't know.
I don't know. We'll have to, somebody will probably chastise me right now and tell me exactly which Lou it is, but it was a Lou.
Yeah.
Okay, this is like a 1 foot tank, right? Looks awesome, right? Okay, well, it's got an AI prime on it. Perfect, because the AI prime's this big, the tank is this big.
Yep.
Right?
1 by 1.
Yeah, like it's not that big of a difference. I'm not trying to cover a 2 foot area with a light that's this big.
Yeah.
Right?
Half dollar size.
That's probably not going to be all that successful, right?
Nope.
All right. What about this one? This is a 6 foot tank. It's 3 foot deep and 30 inches high, 340 gallons. It's got 3 Radion G5s, XR30 blues, 4 XR30 Gen 4s angled from the front. So 7 Radions on a 6 foot tank. That means there's more than 1 per foot.
Yep.
And I'm almost certainly turned sideways. They wouldn't fit otherwise. So turn front to back to cover the deeper angle, 1 every foot. And 1 every foot, I mean, these things are about 7 inches wide. So there's only a couple inches in between each one of these things.
And one thing I would point out, I think Carrie's saying it's angled from the front, which is going to help a ton. Because if those are angled in and shooting in, what are you doing?
Oh.
Now you're lighting the underside of the coral.
Yep.
You're getting light where from the top it wasn't coming. So now your shadows, you can see it. These aren't, you know. So anyway,
That's true. So what he's got is the Gen 4 please going across, and then he also has them angled from the front.
so
It probably highlighting them too. It's probably going to bring better coloration out of them. They're being lit that way as well. All right. This one's the coolest one of all time, right? Didn't buy a single light from anybody. Piped light in from the roof, natural sunlight, and reflected it down in the tank. This tank's been around for a little while. Probably a lot of people have seen it.
A long time. This is there's a great build thread over on Reef to Reef with this, and he documents how he had to go through this and the troubles they've had. And
if anybody in the universe is an inspiration, man, this is it.
Yeah.
Right? It's the coolest project maybe I've ever seen in reefing in my entire life.
Yeah.
You pump in, funnel in light to produce your reef tank. I'm going to go and get natural sunlight. What a cool idea.
Yep.
All right. So in this case, this one is 180 gallon, 6x2x2. It has Hydra 52s, 2 Hydra 52 HDs, 2 Hydra 50 64s, 9 modules in total. 9 Hydras, 52s and 64s over this thing. 9 over a 6 foot tank. This is like the Orphic thing where they're just end to 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 end, but it's producing end to end coral as well. Shadow don't matter. All right, what about this 300 deep dimension? You're starting to hear like a continued story here. It should be starting to get obvious that it really doesn't matter, that the photon isn't magic. It can come out of anything. If you use it correctly, it will be successful. All right? Okay, so we're going to get to what's successful and what correctly looks like. Okay, does this look familiar?
Very.
Yeah, this is how you started, or I started anyway. But in reality, when I read it, it was he used 2 250 watt radiums, 1 400, or I think it was 1 400 watt radium. It also has 4 80 watt T5s up there, and then also had 2 60-inch Reef Brights up there. But in 2020, he took off all of the halides and replaced them with radions, and said that all of a sudden all the corals that were living on the undersides of things all of a sudden started to color up and started to grow. All the things that were in the shadows, and it's the reflections off the glass were illuminating areas that the halides weren't, and all of a sudden the tank was doing much better.
Yeah.
You said something about Devin's tank. Similar.
So Devin of Reef Dudes, when he switched out to the G6 Radions, he was showing off, I think it's on Instagram, but he was showing the zoanthids on his one shelf rock have covered over the edge. They're growing on the bottom side.
Underneath.
Completely underneath. They're colorful, they're growing, and he said he noticed that with the switch over.
Yeah, it's because you got a beam or you got super wide angle and it's bouncing off everything from every possible angle, trying to wrap everything in a blanket of light, and it just works. Well, WWWC did the same thing. So if you, they went from 4s to 6s at one point, I think it was like a few months ago. And when they did it, what they noticed was all the corals that were in the spots that were being shadowed all of a sudden colored up. all of a sudden they were getting the light that they needed and went from brown to colored and started to grow. Like, it's the same thing, man. It was just blanket of light. The better you do the blanket, the better the performance. Doesn't matter the brand you use. All right. Oops. All right. A 400-gallon tank. Also, same thing. This one's actually interesting because it's 3 metal halides, 250 D double-ended Lumibrights pendants powered by Dimmelgold Lumitech electronic ballast. Mostly used in Phoenix 14K or Ushio bulbs, and supplements with 4 Radion G4 Pros. So even with the halides, throwing in 4 Radions into an 88-inch tank, right? So I'm sure that part of the reason you have the Radions in there is to get the adjustable color that you just never got. I mean, like, I remember my T5 days. I owned every bulb under the sun, swapping them, trying to figure out the right color that I could never get. Well, that's the attraction of the LEDs, right?
Yeah, and I'd bet here, being 34 inches, his halides aren't covering that. So he's having to also use that to get fill light out away, because he's not covering 34.
Especially if you raise these things up a little higher.
Yeah, with the 250, you're not covering it. So.
But no questioning the results. Nobody's gonna say, "Oh man, that guy doesn't know what he's doing."
Yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah, nobody's
saying.
no, these are the dreams, man. These are the people to emulate. All right, here's another one. So does that look like a successful tank to you? Sure looks like one to me. That one is powered also by the GHL Mitris, except for it's, again, it's not 1 every 2 feet. It's 1 every 2 feet plus a whole bunch of T5s with the Aquatic Life fill lights. So the Aquatic Life T5 hybrid fixture, flanking it on both sides, adding fill light, because 2 modules probably on their own wasn't going to be able to create that.
And I would assume here, maybe wrong, I think that's a 36, maybe 40-inch tank is all. Again, to 2.
I mean, you've seen it over and over and over again. Like, I love my radios, I love my Mitris, I love whatever it might be. And when you look at the people that are most successful with, they are not 1 every 2 feet.
Nope.
They just aren't.
Nope,
right?
ever.
Okay. All right, this is another good one. So this was a cool mangrove tank. And I love how Reef to Reef and the team over there is like picking out not just like stick tanks every single month. They're taking out different things. A mangrove tank with like a lagoon of like all kinds of other stuff that isn't like super light demanding. Also doesn't really want to see the light clearly above the tank and wants something that is out of the way and isn't going to mess with his mangroves. What does he pick? It's an AP9X. So this is a good point. Like when you see some of the tests, that we're doing, like we picked out the right mounting height for some of this stuff. I don't remember the exact height, but I think it was like 18 inches, give or take a couple inches for the AP9X. Now I don't need that on my standard tank, but this guy does, right? And to be honest, it's a narrow, small, rectangular tank, which is perfect for the 9X because it has a rectangular pattern.
Yep.
And if you lift it up even further, it would cover a bigger area as well. But really cool solution. Also, you can see a couple little LED panels here lighting up the mangroves as well. Very cool solution. All right, so 72, this might be the last one. This is a tank just filled with SPS corals. Lighting is 6 Ecotech Radion Pro Gen 4 supplemented with 10 times T5s. 10 extra T5 bulbs mounted 16 inches above the water line. So this is just to cover a, what is that?
72 by 30.
Yeah,
6 feet by
6
2.5.
feet. There's a Radion every single foot with 10 T5s on it.
Yeah, that.
To produce this. So like you can see over and over and over again, man, blanket of light, blanket of light, blanket of light. Okay. All right. Oh, this is another one. This is pretty obvious what this is. Is this a successful tank? Yep.
Sign me up.
Big bank of T5s, right? All right, so now we're gonna get to the nuts and the bolts of it, right? So we saw the success, we reminded ourselves a little bit, and again, I didn't like cherry pick any of those things. It was just the last 10 tanks that were in there, right? Yep. They're winners. Congratulations, by the way, you guys do awesome. And the question now, let's ask ourselves a handful of questions. Why is it that Magic Photon, like reel back a little bit now, right? Why we just said, nope, T5s just produce better tanks.
They're better.
Right? Well, I would say based on what we just saw there, any of those things could produce any of the tank that we want.
I think if you took all those pictures back, and we didn't see any of the lighting, and you saw all those, everyone would say they're successful, and they'd say, I want that, and tell them you can use any 3 technologies, well 4 if you want to count the sun, and there you go.
Right tool, right job, use the right way.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So could it be the shadows that was preventing the magic? Right? Could it be? The answer, I want to hear out of you guys. I want to hear whether or not you believe that it's the shadows, because these tiny little lights, this big right here, produce a giant shadow in the center, and right here, it's 75% lower par, and right underneath the little arms here, it's 50% lower par. So just think of all the little arms that come from your corals and everything that they're shading. 50% lower par, 50% less photons hitting them. Could it be because the T5s were wrapping this thing in light? Could it be?
I think shadows are a big part, and I remember when you started this lighting series, I think you called me and we were talking about some stuff, and you inspired me, and I grabbed my par meter out, and you mentioned this with Jason a couple weeks ago. But at my top, I've got a green Anacropora, and at the top where it's healthy and thriving and gorgeous, 250 par coming out of my halides. So down underneath it though, there's kind of a rock, little little shelf there. And so I just shoved it in there. It didn't matter. It's all dead and white. And anyway, and I was getting 5 par. Five. I mean, and I was like, no way. So I moved it around, and sure enough, and no wonder, the coral cannot live in 5 par.
Nope.
So shadows obviously are playing a very big part in this.
We just like, we just weren't able to display it in a way that the human mind could really grasp it, right? You can see this and you can say, oh, of course. Right? Of course, this is the one that I would want, and I understand why an organism that thrives on photosynthetic energy would do better into this one. And it's so ingrained, though. Like there was a comment actually on this video where somebody said, "This is a stupid test. Of course, that tiny little light positioned a foot over that plate would create a big giant shadow in the tank." Correct. That's the damn point.
Yeah, that's what do you think your coral's doing? What do you think your monopore cap is doing when the light hits it? This is what it's doing to everything underneath it.
That's absolutely true. All right, here's the deal though, man, is that isn't like only T5s or only halides, because the ATI Straton doesn't have any shadows either. You know what? And just 3 of these AI blades doesn't really have any shadows either. The only thing that really matters here is that the objects that you're using to illuminate your aquascape are bigger than the objects. So the lights are bigger than the object you're trying to illuminate, so it can wrap around it. It doesn't have to be Magic T5 photons. It can be the Straton's photons. It can be the Blade's photons, right? And by the Blades, it can be any strip, by the way. You can configure these strips, because one of the first things that we saw, and we got excited about strips maybe a year and a half ago, was when you bolted the XHOs into that kind of like curve thing, and everybody here was floored with what good distribution and how good it looked in the tank. So could it be shadows? Probably.
And I love that factor. I've thought about going to the Blades and having to create my own, because I want that curved. Because then I can shoot the light instead of in my eyes and in my kids' eyes. I can angle the out one in just a little bit.
Eye factor is important.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Could it be spectrum? Answer yes. Like, are we using the spectrum wrong? Are we offering the wrong spectrum? And so this is what like the 10 years and plus of T5s and fluorescence landed on. The big giant peak of blue light. It's wide, and that pinpoint up there hits right on chlorophyll A, where chlorophyll A absorbs energy the most efficiently. Nails it. Okay. Well, just so you know, chlorophyll A, no coral can live without it, right? Like documented proof. You cannot live without it. There might be one obscure one somewhere on the planet, but for all purposes, 100 out of 100 corals in your tank need chlorophyll A.
Yep. Okay.
Then there's this one, this LED. So this one peaks at 450, which is C2, has almost no chlorophyll, or no representation where chlorophyll A is, which I just told you is required by the animal. Now, it's true that the C2 can be passed back to A, but the coral's gonna have to adapt to that, right? Okay, so now, like, could it be that this just isn't as good as that? Almost certainly.
Yeah.
Right. I was talking to a university professor a couple of weeks ago about this very question. It was like, Oh yeah, nobody who was building, for just biology would build it this way. You'd build it this way because it's inexpensive, cool white LEDs and royal blues. That's the primary purpose. Right?
Yep.
But nobody for biology, will the coral adapt? Yes. And this actually gets to the point where you've seen many tanks where they took, under LEDs, I turned my T5s on and the thing just takes off, right? Okay, with LEDs, it didn't happen. It took 6-9 months and it looked like it was struggling. And then one day, man, it just took off and it behaved just like it was under T5s or any other light, right? Could it be that it's maybe not this one, but looks kind of like this one? It was spending that 6 to 9 months trying to figure out how to change the amount of chlorophyll and carotenoids and C2 and A, to figure out how to use the available energy and optimize to that. And then finally, 6 to 9 months later, when it did, boom, then it takes off.
Yeah, absolutely. We know one thing about corals, and they'll adapt. If we give them the right parameters, we give them the keys to success, they will adapt in time. And then it comes down to us fine-tuning what we like and making sure, though, don't make them adapt for 9 months.
Yeah, why?
If we don't have to, then don't do it.
Well, and because of last week's video where we show how how this spectrum highlights coral and fluorescence better, even if the only thing you care about is yourself and you don't really care about the coral at all, this doesn't highlight the color very well.
Nope.
So, all right, but it's not unique to T5s. This right here is the radion spectrum that we adjusted. We just adjusted the 450 royal blues down a little bit, and boom, this big, huge, wide, thick band of LED or of blue light that hits the carotenoids, that hits the chlorophyll A and the chlorophyll C2, and it's actually wider than the T5s. And you can adjust it to the color, because I don't really like that Windexy blue. So I can adjust it to how I want it to actually look in my tank.
Yep.
Okay, so is it unique to T5s in some kind of magic thing? No. Was it done poorly in many lights prior? Yes.
Early on, absolutely.
Could that absolutely, still today, actually.
Yeah, there's some out there.
Yeah. But early on, the chlorophyll A LEDs, those violet ones, were 10 times as expensive. That's why they weren't in there.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day when the LEDs first came out for us to use, it was blue, white, and that was it. And they were very peaky. I mean, we don't have it on here. It was very set just to the one you had before, the 450. I mean,
this reminds me of PC bulbs, right? We tried them. It just didn't work very good.
Yeah, so when LEDs came out, and I think a lot of us, me right here, I'll talk to myself here, we are still halide T5 lovers because the early LEDs we used killed things. We had a lot of dead coral that was just fine before. And instead of figuring out why the LED is the problem, throw it in the trash, we're done.
Move on.
Yeah, I'm sticking to what I know.
Burned once, and that is absolutely why. I actually had the opposite experience. So I had all T5 tanks, and then one day I really wanted to try halides, and then we did one of the Giesman double-ended fixtures, I think Infinity, is that right?
Yeah, I think the Infinity.
Okay, and then we couldn't grow anything in there. Okay, in hindsight, I now know why. We were burning everything and everything died, right? This is early on. I now know why. It's because it used a double-ended reflector, and the reflector in that thing is super small.
It's barely
right?
bigger than the bulb.
And I was mounting it at the same height as I was the T5s, right? And so I was just shooting this laser beam into the tank. And this is, pre-requirement for par meters and stuff, man. This is 15 years ago. So it wasn't as set it and forget it on that either, Okay.
I remember having to find a par meter early on, testing lights, 15 years ago. My one local store had one, and then a local marine biologist worked at the University of Utah. He had one, and he'd come measure stuff at my house for me. Those were the par meters. They weren't.
Nobody had one.
Yeah, they weren't spend
super rare.
$100 and get one.
Yeah, no way.
So.
Okay, so also could it be spectrum in the essence that our T5's universally better? Again, magic photon. Well, just so you know, this is what natural sunlight looks like. It's fairly even ratio of red, green, and blue. It just varies a little bit, right? This is a white lamp from ATI, like the Aqua Blue Special.
I was going to say that looks like Aqua Blue Special, Coral Plus.
It's very, very peaky. So it's not like even or anything like that. That's because the human eye doesn't need that, and those ranges aren't actually all that important to photosynthesis. And so they just create these peaks that give the illusion of white instead of the actual balance of white, right?
And because these were, their chemistry that made them, they were tri-band phosphors. 1, 2, 3.
There it is.
And that's how they were made. So if they wanted different colors, you had to mix different phosphors into the bulbs. I talked to Oliver over at ATI about it years ago, and it wasn't that simple. It wasn't, well, I just want a little more green, so bump some, new chemical, new phosphor in there. You'll get a little more green. It changed everything.
Yep.
So this is what you got.
You can see it, like bulbs that look kind of like this from other brands. It changed it just a little bit, but if you turn it and put it on the tank, it looks like crap. So it's just small changes in it.
Yeah, not my favorite bulb ever.
Okay, but this is a cool white and this is a warm white. And I'll just be frank that these look a whole lot more like this than the sun than this does. Now I'm not saying that these things are better, but if we're going to call out magic photons, and all things remain the same, I think most people would say that an even blend of these spectrums was probably preferable to this, especially if they're somewhat adjustable.
Yep.
I don't know anybody who would look at it and say, nope, no, that is going to be biologically better. We know it's biologically acceptable for sure.
Yeah, that works. 100% that will work.
Yep.
I don't think you'll like the look of the tank with that, though.
Okay, but is this worse, is the case?
Definitely not worse.
But it's being presented as worse.
And it definitely, that will not look good either. So I'm glad we get the other ones to mix in.
Blend it all out.
Yep.
You know what I would really love? I would really love a light that looks like this, but completely without the blue. Because I have all the blues I need. I have all the controls of the royal blues and all I need. I really just want to add in this hump right here, right? So I don't even really need this, and I'm kind of sad that there's missing the green here in the warm whites, because the green is what gives it that whitish look and brightness to your eye. So I would love it if there was actually a channel that just missed this entirely, because I got all this. I'm just going to add in color and the perception of white with this hump here. All right, but in any case, I wouldn't think nobody would say that these are inferior to that. Okay. All right. So could it be the ease of install? 100% sure on this one.
Yep. We were right there together.
Yeah. Okay. So this right here, when we did all of our testing, we found the right mounting height for all of them. And with the ATI SunPower, we found that it was at 8 inches is the right one. But really, like, if we grossly screwed it up and we mounted at 4 inches, the hot spot's just barely bigger, man. It's like, it doesn't matter. And the reason I know that it really doesn't matter is because I ran my T5s at about 4 inches off the top of the tank.
Yeah, because the legs they sold you, that's how
imperfect. Like, we're looking optimal here.
Yep.
It was imperfect, but, like, you know what? It didn't really matter. It didn't kill anything. Wasn't a problem. All right, well, what about this one? This is an AI Hydra 64. It's got some kind of focused lenses. It's a small compact module. And about 13, 14 inches was the sweet spot for this. What happens if I mount this thing too low? Now I got laser beam problems in here, man.
Yeah.
I have giant hot spots. I'm burning and killing coral because it's 200, 300% higher.
Oh, yeah, photo inhibition is going on here. So the coral's just protecting itself at that point. It's not even trying to grow.
Survive.
It's just, I've got to protect myself, probably usually until I bleach and die.
Okay, so this one, mount it wherever the hell you want, plug it in the wall. This one needs to be done intelligently and optimally at 13 to 14 inches, which I doubt very many people would actually come to the conclusion on their own. Yeah. All right, so, like, could it be that some of the reasons why you and me and other people weren't successful with LEDs early on, because we didn't mount them right?
Absolutely, because I come from the T5 in the Halliday world. We were somewhere between 8 to 12 inches. And if you were 8 inches with especially early LEDs, we think we got laser beams now. The early LEDs were even worse. Look what you were doing.
You probably, or like the AI Souls and all that stuff, and man, it was laser beams.
The par 30 and par 38 bulbs with 15-degree reflectors, so you could highlight that one certain coral, but what you're really doing is throwing like 900 par right in the center of it and just melting it.
Okay. All right, but this isn't unique to the T5 bank, because look at this. This is the ATI Stratton, big, huge LED. This thing literally is the same. At 1 inch, it's an 81% hotspot. And at its optimal height, 26 and 27% hotspot. The only thing that changed is this one likes 9 inches and that one likes 8. But you couldn't screw this up either.
But even if you screw this one up at 5 or 6 inches, look, 4237, look how close you are.
Dude, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, not surprised because it's created by the same company, I guess. But it's not unique to T5s that you could have plug-and-play performance. It doesn't have to be that it's this old, outdated technology that I have to have it that way. And you know what? You can actually improve upon it. This was our 5 AI blades, which cost about the same amount of money, I think, as the Stratton, right? Here, 0 inches, mounted flush. You could mount it there. Like, you just can't screw this up. And in fact, there's no hot spot if you go higher. You just get a little bit of spill into the room, right? But here, like, we've actually improved on it. Literally, you cannot screw this up. There is no way. And it's not even a punishment factor, man. At 0 inches, it is the exact same as at 8 inches in distribution for the SunPower. We can improve on older technology. And part of the reason why is because basically the ATI SunPower isn't a light. It's the connection of 8 lights.
Yep. When you said that a couple weeks ago, I never even thought, this is 8 strip lights, and I've just put them into one fixture.
And I just happened to pack them end to end like that fixture we saw earlier.
I got them as close as we can get them.
Okay, so one of the reasons that you're seeing it this way is because when I break those strips apart, now I can spread them out in a grid evenly over the whole tank in the shape of the tank, which is a square, when this thing is a rectangle.
And here we can control the angle of reflection.
You can also
with
change
these.
it.
On the T5 bulbs, ATI gave us the best, 2.5 inch wide, whatever it was, reflector. And they had to figure out what's the proper angles to send the light down and spread it.
In reality, like, I think, we talked about that arc, I think it's good for your eye, like you mentioned. But in reality, the problem with all of these lights in general is they all put out an even cone, right? But the problem is in the center of the tank is where all the cones intersect, right? And so that's where the hot spot is, because they all have cones and cones and cones that all intersect in the middle. If we aim them in, we actually make the problem worse. Yeah. Now, nobody would do this for the light reason that you're talking about, which you get in your eye. But if on the outside, when you actually aimed it out and bounced it off the glass, you would probably get even better distribution than aiming it in. It would be more even.
And something just hit me big time here. If you want to do the angle thing I'm talking about, you can turn down, or if you just do it, turn down some of them. These are all individually controllable.
Yeah.
Turn down certain ones to kill that hot spot in the middle, where here you don't have a choice. Every bulb ran it the same.
We did that with the AI primes. So, it was very common to put 2 of those the Hydra 64s over a tank. Well, we put 8. Same amount of pucks. It wasn't even like much different in money. And we just spread it out. So each one of those is covering about a 1 foot area. And now, like, that thing is performing not all that different than the T5s. And what we would do is make the outside brighter than the inside to create a blanket. And because the back of the tank is aquascape and all the corals are higher, and the front of the tank is the corals are lower, you can actually zone the front and the back differently as well. So absolutely, you could do that with the blades as well. And the front ones you could make more intense than the back ones. So it gives you more flexibility than you have with something like this. All right, so what about the blending? This one is very interesting to me. So for those who don't know, I'm sure everybody's watching this knows, you take 20 shots underneath the glass, a little bit of flow, and then you watch. And what's happening is the lenses are shooting off the water. And the little water ripples create a lens, and the lens focuses that light and then shoots that around as little beams. You can see it, it's called disco, but you can also measure it with a spectrometer. So the SunPower T5s, this is 3 different bulbs, by the way. So I'm blending 3 totally different spectrums that share kind of the same blue hump, but it really doesn't change at all, man. There's 20 shots. This is what good looks like, right? Okay, so this one uses those little lenses on each individual LED, and then the lens from each individual LED will hit the wave, and you can see it just kind of changing. Now, there is some debate to be had here. Like, is this worse than that? Who knows?
Yeah, Sure, if you want to go test it.
I don't think anybody will ever know, because who is going to go test this, get it peer reviewed, and stamp it and say, we know that unblended LEDs perform good on corals in the home environment. Not a single scientist is taking on that PhD project. We'll never know.
Nope.
So the reality is there is some debate to be had as to, even though that's pulses of spectrum, if we're just counting photons, it's likely in the end, when we average it all out, the same amount of all of these photons will land on the coral the same way. But we don't know that. We don't know that there's not artifacts of reflections. We also don't know that getting hit with pulses of intense spectrums like red and UV and violet is the same as being blended with all of them. The only thing I say all the time is, if all things remain the same and it was cost and you liked everything else about the lights the exact same, every single person would pick blended over unblended.
Absolutely, because if it has, like you talked about, the disco effect, it's already out for me.
Yeah.
I don't even need to look at a light that's got disco, because if I'm seeing it with my eyes, the corals are biologically seeing that.
If you can test it with the meter, which is only going like once a second, I can definitely see it with my eyes.
Yeah.
It's called disco, TV static, undesirable. I call it artifacts of the technology used. The artifact of this technology used is it looks super flat and ugly. It's just like nothing's moving,
Yeah,
right?
no
And
contrast.
there's no contrast, and it just like not my favorite look. You pop in like a Kessel into the mix, and then all of a sudden, man, the thing comes alive. There's contrast and there's movement to it.
Yep.
Okay, the artifact of this one is we got all these little LEDs, so we can see the stuff shooting around all over the place. All right, but this isn't unique to T5s yet again, right? This right here is the blade with XR15 with a diffuser on it. So the blade uses that little acrylic sheet, and it has like a little recessed hole in it, and then the 4 LEDs are in there. The little recessed hole, they reflect off of the sides, and it serves as like a little color mixing chamber inside there. And then also, it illuminates that plastic sheet. And then the plastic sheet becomes its own source of light, which ends up diffusing the whole thing as a uniform sheet of light. And then, of course, when you put the little diffuser pane on the XR15, all of a sudden you get so little movement here. Like everything's not going all willy-nilly and Wild West, right? And this is the Sky. The Sky uses both. The Sky uses that diffusion lens, the acrylic lens, and then also uses the diffusion pane on it, and all of a sudden you can't see it move at all, and it's almost like this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not an artifact of T5s, it's just an artifact of how you use the technology and whether or not that technology is important to you. Okay, so could it also be a reluctance to use a par meter? 100% sure. Right?
Yep.
I mean, how, like 7 years ago, what percentage of people use a par meter?
You'd blow my mind if you said it was more than 1%.
Yeah.
I mean, 2000, 15, 16?
Who's buying a $500 meter to set up their lights just for something you're going to use once?
Yeah, 7 years ago, like I said, 15 years ago, there were like 2 people I knew of in my entire area that had one.
Yeah, nobody in my club, man, was using. Like, there might have been one that was like passing it around, but like, I didn't need them.
Well, you didn't.
Right? Okay, yeah, you didn't need them with this. You didn't need them with this. You just need how many bulbs you use, okay? Well, now you do, because there's so many things. There's mounting heights and all this stuff, and if you watch some of these videos now, the cool fact of this is the artifact of creating all this content is now there's a video out there that has 50 different configurations of light. You can go out there and just find out what the height is. And then, let's pretend you don't have a 2-foot cube and it's slightly different. Anybody that you could intuitively guess pretty damn close, where you should be from there.
Yep.
Most people. Certainly better than guessing like just, Wild West.
But again, I mean, nowadays, there's not even a reason. Your club has one, Joe down the street has one, or you buy one here, return it, you spend $100, and you don't even question.
I don't think most people know that, by the way, but you can buy from bulk resupply a par meter, the 510. You could use it for 2 months. 2 months, perfect your light. You can borrow it to your buddies, share the cost with 3 different people, and after 2 months, return it for 80%. You get all the value out of it, and it costs you 20%.
If I just spent, and not any of these pictures, but if I just spent $2,000 on LEDs, for $100, I want to know it's correct.
And just so you know, it's a giant pain in the butt for us to manage all that. It is not a profit source. What it is like my own frustration with the fact that like people need this tool to be successful. And like not everybody, some people just get lucky. But everyone else, they can't just rely on luck, right?
Yep.
Would be way, way better off. You're gonna spend all this money on lighting and then just hope that you get it right. Just like wing it. When just for the cost of a restocking fee, you could know you got it right. That doesn't make any sense to me. So know that you have that option out there now, and we did it just to try to help you guys because it drives me absolutely batty. You can see throughout this whole video, several things drive me batty because I just want to change the conversation so bad.
Yeah.
I want to adapt the things that were working. Right tool, right job. It isn't halides, it isn't T5s, it isn't LEDs. It's how do we get the right photons and how we distribute them to the right coral. All right, so another one. Could it be UV? This is another frustrating conversation.
This is where a few weeks ago I'd have told you something different than what I'll tell you today. But I would absolutely have argued to the death it was this.
That you need UV to be successful.
This was it. Here it was.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And that's why LEDs suck, right?
Yep.
Except for the LEDs, actually, a lot of them have really close, like their peak flows over into 380, or like this one. This is the Mitris peaks at like almost. It's like I don't know. Look at what is it? 385, right? Okay, it's there, right? Has it? Like so. I don't know. Here's the problem, though, man. Is well, T5s don't have it.
That's where I changed, right there.
Certainly, this isn't preventative to success.
Because this, I know, that's the Blue Plus. There's your ATI Blue Plus.
This is actually a mix of the Blue Plus, the Actinics, and the Coral Plus.
The Coral Plus. So we'd be close, though. But if you told me we take that, and you could take all 6 Blue Plus if you wanted, put a fixture, put it over a tank, and tell me I'm not going to have a successful tank. I'm going to. I know I'm going to. Mm-hmm. Colors might be a little off. I'm not going to get any reflective colors. Fish are going to look terrible. But my coral are going to grow. They're going to flourish like crazy. They're going to be happy. And look at this. There's nothing down there.
Mm-mm. If you told me that I needed that to be successful, I'd stop listening to you.
Well, you can argue back. T5s would have never been successful then.
Yeah,
they would never have worked.
I know that is untrue. I've seen, like, there's tens of thousands of tanks out there that have done it without. It is not true.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now the question is there some kind of benefit from adding UV or near UV, this like 380 peak? Maybe. I don't know. I've never seen any definitive proof one way or another.
If you've got the LEDs and it's on there, turn them up.
Yeah,
I guess test it, find out for yourself.
Okay, I've never, none of the farmers I know have said that. I've never seen a real compelling case from any reefer that has actually shown anything in their tank. The only thing that I've ever seen is if you get enough of the UV, that some corals will actually change their fluorescence from green to red. Okay, well, if you want your rainbow acans to turn from rainbow color to red, then I guess, but not that many people actually want that.
Yeah, and so I started down this whole path a couple weeks ago and started to find peer-reviewed papers, like actual journal style from marine biologists, people who are testing this in the wild. And UV, true UV, no one we're talking about UV 400 and below here, not what marketers tell us it is, it doesn't make it in the ocean very far. Mm-hmm. I found the one place that they were starting to measure UVB, and it was gone within 1 meter of the surface of the water.
Yeah, so maybe some of those corals at the top, but certainly not the ones that are 30 feet down.
I think the ones at the top are just protecting themselves.
I think you might actually be able, let's just burn real quick back to that sunlight one. Did I go past it? It must have.
Oh, there it was. Back.
There it is. Yeah, you can actually see. This is 400 where you can see it actually goes way, way, way down. It just isn't, available the same way. And you certainly can't see it with the naked eye the same way. All right. So in that spirit, I don't know if it's a value, but the whole pitch. Actually, you said something to me in my office just before we started this about you being mad about UVB.
Yeah, there's a recent video out there trying to tout as UVB the missing spectrum that we need. And the whole time, what have we been told? Since I started this in 2005, what have we been told? The glass around a halide single end bulb or the glass shield is required because it filters the UV.
Protects you from radiation that will absolutely harm you and your eyes.
And UVB causes skin cancer. We don't even have to guess that. Like, my whole family it runs. We have to get checked all the time. And now I've just found out that my halides over my tank, I'm currently running 3 radium bulbs over my tank, are putting out UVB with my 5-year-old staring at them.
Sitting on my couch.
Staring at them. And I was told UV was never getting through, and now they are.
Okay, so there's the bit, like, let's just pretend that UVB did some phenomenal thing for the tank. They're like, oh my, man. And all those other things that we saw were like, all those other tanks, like all of a sudden it was somehow better than those. Don't care. Why would I want that in my household? Why would I want to look into that, have my kids look into that? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and you know what, if you want UV sterilization, put a UV sterilizer on the tank and be done.
There you go.
Why use your lights above it?
Okay, so for me, somebody asked me about this, like in the future, will we include the UV in our like wide blue band conversation, right? Where we span the gap between the chlorophyll A peak and the perdinatin peak. And the answer is no, because I have seen no compelling evidence that it is required for success or largely beneficial when that comes out. When suddenly there's a consensus within the hobby that this thing produces better results, and we'll add that in. Will we show that it has it for the person that wants it and wants to be the trailblazer? Absolutely. So it's there for you. You can monkey around with it. You may or may not like the color that it changes your corals. So this is the question now, when we tie it all up. You like take all the stuff and like all the tests that we've done, add it with a little bit of common sense, you add it with the Tank of the Month winners, you add it with decades, 4 decades of experience sitting at this table right here. All right, so we're sizes of the light and the shadows. Does that matter?
Absolutely.
Okay, if so, does the T5s do it better than LEDs?
The LED probably does it better, or at least they're so close you never know.
Yep, I would say that they're indistinguishable, and if you wanted to, the flexibility of the bars and stuff, you could actually do it better if you wanted to. So Magic Photon here? No. Nope. Could it be spectrum? If so, absolutely it can be spectrum, the quality of the light. If it's not hitting chlorophyll A, maybe the coral adapts to it, but why would you want to make it to it, especially if it's not going to look as good? If so, is the LED, who wins, LED or T5? Spectrum-wise.
At this point, they're pretty much the exact same.
I think that you can create the exact thing you want, and then the LED gives you the flexibility to make it actually look good to the eye as well.
Yep, and you don't have to sit and buy $25 bulbs that just sit in the corner and you never use them again.
No Magic Photon. We just weren't adding the photons that were required. We were just calling it LED technology. We just weren't applying it right. Could it be ease of install? If so, LEDs definitely can be ease of install. Lots of people installed them wrong. If so, LED versus T5.
This is where I think the majority of us got it wrong early on. That right there is what killed so much.
Well, a lot of it was because we were testing them in air and stuff, and our goal was 600 par. Like we were chasing midday par, in the Caribbean, like 1100 par and stuff. Like I don't know what people were trying to emulate. We weren't. What I saw back then was when we switched to LEDs, everybody was referencing what the ocean was instead of going back and saying what were my T5s and halides that were working. We should have emulated the artificial environment that was working before we went to something that's almost irrelevant, being the ocean, because we would later find out, Dana Riddle's work, that really they're growing the fastest in the morning and the evening, and during those peak hours, they're just trying to survive and protect themselves.
Yep, and I think right there, that's a big one. And having the videos you've been doing now, anybody that's out there, you don't need to buy something new, just make what you have work properly. If you've got something that should be 14 inches off and you got it at 6, let's change it.
So the big thing here would be that I still give it to T5s. It's still plug it in the wall and call it a day.
Yeah.
Right? But we've taken big leaps and bounds here to now figure out how to do it much, much better. We know what good looks like and we know how to emulate it.
And I'd call out right now, you guys, the manufacturers, make it easier to install. In the apps, don't give us, hide it in advanced settings, fine, to give us 9 sliders. But for the most part, let us pick something we know. We know we like the 14K, we like the 20K, whatever it is. Just let us pick that, set the sliders, and be done.
Okay, so I got a pet peeve to pick. There's a bunch of people out there that would say, that like the Radion G6 is too wide, right? Which boggles the mind to me. Because what it's doing is bouncing off of the glass, right, and then reflecting back in. And if you go look at it, it also has one of the largest sweet spots of all of those modules, right? So almost all of those modules have like a 1-inch sweet spot. You gotta hit it right on. These ones have like 3-inch sweet spots, and like you could really have a pretty good area that is real common, right in that like 5 to 8 inches that like it'd be, most people would put it in, because it doesn't have a laser beam. It's wide. And just the same way that the T5 bulb used the reflector that was inside there to get light distributed, well, that's also what happened after it was distributed, hit the glass and distributed throughout the tank. We're now doing that again with these modules. And so I think the reality is not everybody is out there is going to want a big, huge panel of light over their tank. They're just not gonna. It isn't visually attractive to have these huge, monstrous lights over there. You definitely saw some lights in the tank of the month that like, wow, that certainly produced a tank, but I might not want all those wires and everything. So the hybrid of that, and where you should see the future going, is medium-sized modules that are super, super wide angle, catch it even at like an inch below the water angle, and bouncing back in to blanket the light in a totally different way. Just like you said with Devon, it's bouncing off there, and now the zoanthids are growing underneath the rock.
Yeah.
Okay, so anybody who said that a light could be too wide like that and there's no value bouncing off the glass hasn't seen Devon's corals growing upside down in the dark, or what would look like the dark.
And what's even better, I like from that, of them growing, now all of his colonies that weren't getting anything inside in the middle are getting light now. Now the coral's not gonna die from the inside out, and you're gonna start that process. Now you can keep some stuff alive in the middle so the coral stays healthier.
Or that gentleman that replaced all his halides with the Radions, and he still had the T5s and stuff, and then immediately said the things underneath the overhangs and the corals that were being shaded they got better coloration. Like, these are big, giant reflectors, man. And now there is a way to get similar performance in a smaller form factor, but it needs to be highly engineered, and it certainly isn't to create cones of light that go straight down. It's to leverage that glass and bounce it back in. Mm-hmm. Okay, so could it be blending? If so, LEDs to T5s. I don't know. For me, I just don't care because I want it to look nice, so it doesn't matter to me. I don't want to see disco and stuff in the artifact, so if it's good to the animal, great, but I want it to look good for me, so good win for both of us. But no question, the blending is going to be done by the T5s and the halides for sure. It is absolutely true instead of the little teeny LEDs, unless you use the diffusion glass, or the diffusion lens and the diffusion paint, or one or the other. Could it be par? Certainly so. LEDs versus T5s. This is one of the things, though, where you get flexibility now, right? Because the more and more I learn about corals, we tell everybody that like 200 to 300 par, 50 par is like the sweet spot for SPS, right? Here's the reality of it. That's the safe spot. That's a spot where they grow really well. They don't have a lot of photo inhibition. Okay. One day your tank will be so full of coral that growth will actually be your problem. Mm-hmm. You don't want it to grow fast anymore. And you will also learn that when you crank up the par slowly, like 10%, maybe a month, until you get where you want to go, and you start hitting those like 450 and 500 pars, that's where the color comes out, right? But that's like a year-long journey. It's not like go use your acclimation mode and like let it scale up 50% par. You have to slowly get there. Otherwise, you're going to see setbacks. But the LEDs allow you to take that journey. I can set it up for growth. I can set it up for photosynthesis, and then I can set it up for pigment production at a later date, right? Okay. Could it be UV? If so, LEDs versus T5s. I don't know. I feel like LEDs win. We're not in T5s.
I don't. This, like I said, this is where I was. It had to be this until I started remembering looking at the T5 spectral charts, and it wasn't there. So if T5s would not have been successful again if it was required.
There's no way. We would never got this far.
And the LEDs that don't have any UV, and they're out there, and they're producing tank of the month, you know?
The UV bit, I've heard 101 really, really compelling theories, like probable theories. And I haven't seen one iota of documented evidence of, I used these things, I added this in, and that was the only change I made, and look at the results from it. Isn't that powerful? Don't you want that too? Never seen that. And I've been exposed to a lot of people, farmers, everybody. Never seen that.
Let's go to the ocean. What are the corals that are grown 90 feet down that have absolutely no UV? How are they surviving if it's required?
So in that conversation, I'm just guessing here because I don't collect corals. I bet you that the corals are largely collected between, probably 10 and 30 feet, because most of them are doing it by holding their breath.
Yeah, I've heard it's one breath. I've heard all corals are collected at one breath.
Yeah, so 90 feet, it would be a rarity, I think.
But the corals wouldn't survive down there if that's what it required to have in it as light for photosynthesis.
Yep. Okay. So can we use the right tool the right way? Can we evolve the conversation? Can we decide that wrapping the corals in light is actually the solution? Getting the spectrum right and the wide blue bland is a solution. Getting the spectrum blended right. Getting the mounting height right. Getting all these things right. That is how you make sure that once I set this thing up, I don't have to touch it again. It looks awesome and I'm good to go. And at this point, this little fairy here and her magic photons from there start to look pretty silly.
Yeah. Where is it?
Yeah.
Show me what spectrum that magic photon's coming out of.
I bet you Sanjay somewhere is sitting there saying, thank you. Thank you. There is no magic photon. All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for being part of the group and helping so much over there. Thank you for all the swag that you create for us and all of the community.
Absolutely.
This was super fun.
Yeah, love it. Gotta do it again.
I now got this out of my soul. You guys do what you want to do with it, but tell me and tell Ryan if you agree with this conversation, because other people are going to watch this and they're going to look to you for guidance. And it's really, really important that as thought leaders in the community that we help people be successful, not just regurgitate some of the thoughts that we might have had. What are the things that produce the most results, the best results? Let's share that information with everybody, and then we can progress from there. All right.
All right.
See you guys all next week.
See ya.
See you then.